Hi guys, it's Kelly back again with another video. Today I'm going to be working with this heartfelt hydrangea stamp from Gina K. It's a beautiful it's in one of their mini sets, so it's really beautiful. And then I'm also playing with the new liquid watercolors from Hero Arts. So I had received these and I did kind of swatch them out. On the right hand side is the colors that as they come. On the left hand side is some colors that I've mixed, which is one of my favorite properties of these watercolors because they're in the droplets. So you can, exactly the recipe for the color that you mixed. So for the orange, I did 2 yellow to 1 red. For the teal, I did 2 indigo to 1 pine. So I just really love the way that they mixed. And because I like bold, bright color, I super love how concentrated they are. I am stamping what am I using? Canson watercolor paper, and I'm stamping this in Barely Beige ink from Simon Says Stamp. This will not melt away as I watercolor, but it is a light enough ink. In fact, I had to stamp it twice to be able to even see it. On this watercolor paper, probably because it's such a fine line stamp and watercolor paper is textured. So I stamped it twice. It's not going to melt away, which is great because this is a very kind of involved stamp that I want to watercolor, and I need to be able to see where the pieces parts are. I moved it up slightly, and then I am inking the blooms of the flower, not so much the bottom leaf or the stem of it, because that would stamp over the one I previously stamped. I guess my goal here is I'm going to show you in real time. I put down a line of color. I get my paintbrush wet. I blot off the bottom part of the bristles, and then I take that very small amount of water to the pigment that I've laid down and spread it out. From there, once it's kind of got that little, it's just a sheen, like the water's not bubbled up, then I can pick up more color and kind of drop it in till I get the intensity that I want. Now, like I said, I'm showing you here in real time. I am eventually going to speed it up because this piece was very time consuming, but A, I think worth it, and B, I wanted you to be able to see the whole thing. So just kind of dropping in that color. This is the indigo. I'm also going to make sure that they stay slightly with that sheen on it, and then I'm going to drop in some mulled wine, which is their purple. It's a beautiful, I think it's probably my favorite color, which is strange because purple is not my favorite color, but I just think it's really, really beautiful. I also mixed, which you can't see because of my palette, I mixed 2 drops of indigo, 1 drop of strawberry, and 1 drop of mulled wine to create kind of like a really dark purple that I also used in this piece. After I did that, I decided I kind of wanted to do kind of a washy background, what they call like underpainting. So I'm switched to a number 8 round brush. I'm painting with a number 2, but I switched to a number 8 to do the background. And then I'm just kind of dropping in color wherever it is. I am covering. Enunciation is important for communication. Anyway, I am covering up the ones I previously painted, but I'll go back and make sure that those stand out. But I put down some indigo, and then I put down more of that mulled wine color, and I'm just kind of moving it around. I don't have a lot of water on my paper. That's why I'm having to move the color myself. It was a large area. I was kind of nervous about warping because I didn't have this taped down. So I didn't want to put too much water on there. If I had it taped down, I could have just gone crazy and then put down, mass amounts of water, and then however it moved, it moved. But this one was much more controlled because I did not have it taped down and I wasn't looking for it to be crazy warped. I still needed to paint the rest of the thing. So once I kind of had some color on there, I did a little bit of like negative painting, which means you paint the area around the object. So I went back in using those same 2 colors, and there were some areas that I wanted to be a little bit bolder. So I'm kind of a little tentative at first because I wasn't really sure how that was going to look. I'm going to get a little bit more courageous here in a minute, and then just add down some more of that purple. But again, I'm going along the lines of the image that's already there, so that when the piece is completed, there would be some areas of darker color behind. Negative painting is a beautiful, beautiful technique. And I would highly recommend that you try doing it. But so anyway, now here I'm going to go back and start, like, I don't know, darkening up those ones that I put the water over, even though I previously painted them, because clearly I've moved that watercolor around and they're not as bold as I would like them to be. So just, I don't just, keep going, I guess, keep going with it. I think a lot of times people get so discouraged with watercolor. In watercolor, you never really know what it's going to look like until it's dry. And even then, it's not unfixable. You can totally go back in and darken it up, or if it got too dark, you can put some clean, clear water, blot it up with a clean paper towel and lighten it up. It's just such a versatile medium to work with. But I think a lot of times it is very overwhelming, and it doesn't need to be. Something like this where you're continually painting the same thing over and over again, I definitely got more confident as I went. I got more comfortable in knowing what I would like to do, or what the color should look like. And there will be times where I'll come back to other petals and just kind of add more, or more color because it was too soft. Speaking of that, I started this out saying that I really loved bright color, but this piece actually came out really, really soft and pretty. In fact, it came out so soft, I had to change the way that I do my photography. So somebody had asked me what camera and video, like video camera and actual camera I use to take photos. So the actual video camera is a Samsung. I don't know the model. Sorry. Awkward pause. I don't know the model. I can tell you, we bought it at, I don't know, Target for like $150 or something. And then my husband actually built me a mount, a mount out of PVC pipe that sits around my work area and holds the camera. It just like screws in so that it sits directly above my desk. And then for my actual pictures, like the static photos that I take, I use a Nikon Coolpix. I have heard several people, I know like Jennifer McGuire just takes them with her phone. I've never got really good results with that. So if you have a phone that will take quality photos, fantastic. I'm too cheap. I'm just too cheap. It is what it is. But anyway, so typically when I'm taking photos, it's, 2:00 in the morning. So I don't have natural light to take the photos in. I have a Foldio, it's a light box basically. And I have the bigger size. It's all white in there. And then I can kind of swap out the things that I need. It has 2 rows of lights, that like photo quality lights that you can turn on. And then I also set the exposure on my camera. I think it's like 1.3 is what I have it set at. And not that you need to know all of these amazing things about cameras, but basically your exposure is how much light your camera lets in by changing how long the aperture or the opening of your camera stays open. The longer it's open, the more light that it catches. So I have mine bumped up slightly because I am taking pictures in the middle of the night. And then, so for this one, I did all of those things that I would normally do, but it was completely washed out. It was like too much light. But if I changed the setting on the exposure, it was too dark. So I ended up actually using natural light, which I'm sure you noticed in the beginning, my photos are different than they normally look. I had bought photo boards. I can't remember where I bought them. I'll link it below. But I had bought photo boards and they were far too large for my little Foldio box. So I very, very rarely, if ever, get to use them. So this time I did get to use them though. And I always kind of like laugh to myself. It's called photo staging for a reason. So the photos that I took today, we have a large picture window in our family room. So I laid my photo board down on my couch. And then kind of brought in my little accessories, my, flowers, the the little plate, doily, all that stuff. And took my photos in natural sunlight, which resulted in much, much better photos. And it wasn't so washed out. I did have to change up some of the settings, like once I loaded them into the computer. But ultimately, they were much better photos than the one that I were taking with my light box, because it was just with lighter things, and I have always had this problem. There's just no good, I've never found a good way to take them in the light box. So anyway, speaking of photo staging, a lot of people will say on Instagram and stuff, and they'll ask me, like, you know, as far as like setup, I really honestly have zero idea what I am doing when it comes to the staging of a photo for my cards. I talked to people that I admired their photo staging, and that's kind of how I got where I am, what I do. So I talked to Dawn Wolfslegel from W+9. I talked to Giannis Makula. I talked to Sherry Carroll. People that I had loved the way that their photos looked. And so basically the advice that I was given is lighting, very important. In not being too cluttered about where they are. You kind of want to create, like often in card design, we talk about the visual triangle. So you kind of want to create that same thing with your photo staging, if that's something that you're interested in doing. But even if you don't do any of those things, you don't put it on a plate. Oh, raise it up. That was the other good piece of advice that they gave me. Even if you just like put it on an acrylic block, you want to raise it up off of its surface if you're taking flat photos, which is how I take all of mine now. I never did. I always took them, kind of head on, and I like the look of the flat photo so much better, and I didn't have to compete with so many shadows, so that was an added bonus. But anywho, so you want to raise it up. But even if you don't do any of those things, like the lighting of it is so important. You don't want your photos to be too dark. You've created this beautiful card, this, beautiful little piece of artwork, and you don't want anything to take away from that, least of all some bad lighting. So, and then from there, I just kind of started purchasing things. I used a lot of my craft supplies, like I use my paintbrushes, distress inks, watercolors, whatever. And then I also will go to like the dollar store, because I am cheap. Nothing's changed there since I started card making. Or like the dollar bin at Target's so good. But I'll pick up like just little plates. The wood piece that I have that I take photos with is actually a base for a candle, to put like a pillar candle on, so it's a centerpiece. Those are really good. And then a lot of fake flowers. Lots of fake flowers. Those are another thing that you can add. And all of these things are relatively inexpensive. So yeah, absolutely feel free to, if you're into that or if you have a question, by all means, I will try to help you as much as I can. But I was asking other people, so I'm certainly no expert. So with these, with the Hero Arts watercolors, I'm doing the same thing every single time. And that's why, like I said in the beginning, like pieces like this are awesome because you're painting the same thing over and over again. So you have an opportunity for that comfort level to grow. And I know it's hard to see, but every time I am picking up the color, laying it down, I am rinsing off my brush, and then I am blotting those bristles. I have the paper towel that I'm using kind of off screen, so you can't see me blotting it, but I am every single time because I just need that control. I need to be able to control the water, to control the pigment so it doesn't look blobby and things still look like what they're supposed to look like. And especially with something like this where the petals are so small, having that control is super, super important. I do really love the concentration of them. Like, they're so dark. I used such a little amount of paint to paint this. And one of the things, I don't know if you went through the Hero Arts blog hop. If you didn't, I would encourage you to do that because it was awesome. But anyway, Christina Warner did a video where she just lettered with the liquid watercolors. But one of the things that she did say, which was so helpful to me, was how to reactivate them. So if they dry in the palette, that you do have to, you don't want to add water to the pigment. Like, you don't want to water down the color. But if you just, get your paintbrush wet, or if you just put like one more drop of color in there, just enough to get some fluid in there, and then mix them up, it will break back down and become smooth, and you can use it. That's what I did with all of these. That's kind of why the little pots are kind of messy, because I was mixing them up. So I've slowed down the video again so I can do the leaves. I did the first leaf the same way I've been doing the petals. Laid down the pigment, blotted off, brought the color out. And then I'm just adding, darker pigment until I am happy with it. For the next leaf, the large leaf, I thought I would try something different. So I thought, okay, well, I'll wet the whole leaf, and then I'll just drop color in. That was my game plan. But again, I think because I'm using such minimal water, it's not really moving on its own. And so then I felt the need to kind of move it. That may also just be like the control freak in me, that I felt like I needed to get in there and do with it. I really like dropping in other colors. Like, as you can tell with the flowers, it was the indigo, the mulled wine, and then the combination dark purple. And so I did add some more, I add some mulled wine to these leaves. I'm also going to add in some deep ocean eventually. But I did not like the way that worked for me, that dropping the color in technique. Again, I think if I was working with more water, it would definitely move more and I would have been happier with it, but not taped down. Decisions were made. So I just kind of, keep going back until I am happy with the way that those are looking. Here, I didn't, and this is something that I have struggled with, particularly with this technique, is larger areas. How much color is enough color to cover the entire surface area? And that's something that I'm still learning and playing with, and ultimately, it might take me a little longer to get to where I'm going, but usually I get there with something that I am happy with. So that part isn't that big of a deal. There's just going to be a learning curve there. I did want to kind of bring some of that green out into the quote-unquote underpainting area. And so you'll see me do that periodically, kind of just paint some into the background. This, the green that I'm using is, the most of the time that I'm using is the moss. So the darker of the two greens that came out with this release. And again, I'm, liking to drop in those colors. These, I think, any kind of detailed stamp, I think it makes people feel like they're not doing it right because it looks very blobby in the beginning. But that doesn't mean that you're not doing it right. If it looks blobby, that's fine. Let it dry and then go back in and add in your detail layers. Like, these leaves aren't looking like anything fantastic at the moment. They're, there's a little bit of shading towards where they're coming off the stem, and then that, other color that I'm dropping in, but they aren't, anything fantastic at the moment. I always feel like for my watercolor pieces, because I am, I do like, I guess, more of that realistic look. I always feel like they come to life for me when I go back in and add in that detail layer, but that does require a little bit of patience because those things should be mostly dry when you're doing it, or you're not going to get clean details. So, just working through all of those leaves, once I have all of that down and I have let them dry, like the bottom ones are going to be dry at this point, I'm going to go back in with darker concentrated color. And this is a number 2 round brush from the Silver Brush Company. I do love the way that they keep their point. You can get very detailed with them. And so I am going back and painting in those details. And for me, that's where those leaves kind of come to life. Obviously, there is a looser watercolor technique that you can do. But anyway, that's basically the whole card. So I just stamped down the sentiment from that same set with soft navy ink from Simon Says Stamp, and then I just let it be. I didn't even add anything else. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that information was helpful to you, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.